and welcome to Coffee with the Dev, where we have Coffee with the Dev. My name is Beck and I will be your host for this episode, and today I'm very excited to be talking to Tana, one of the only developer behind Shape Sender Deluxe, as far as I know. Well, more on that, spoilers maybe later. Welcome in, Tana, how are you?
I'm great, how are you?
I'm good. Now, we've got to kick this off with arguably the most important question of this entire podcast, and that is, what coffee are you drinking today?
Sacrilegiously, I have an Earl Grey tea.
No, but I'm also drinking tea. We'll just change the name of the podcast for this episode. It'll be Tea with a Dev. Maybe that's got a nice ring to it. I was like, we can't really call it like caffeinated beverage with the developer because that just doesn't work. But I'm also drinking a tea today because I've already had my allocated coffee this morning and I can't do it anymore. Cool. All right. So we're going to kick this off with, just your whole life story. How did you get into creating games?
It's a great question, and it is, a whole life story. But I started with games, playing them, as a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. And I have this very distinct memory of being at my nana's house playing Morrowind on the family computer and discovering you could edit stuff and then giving it a go, not making anything happen. But, I tried, and that was fun. And it didn't really properly get into like modding games until I started with Gary's mod and playing with the Source engine. So, like using the Hammer map editor to make so much random stuff. I didn't really make campaigns or like levels with things that you would do. I just made spaces to hang out in. Some of them are like still online. One of them is like a train station. One of them is like a mini mart in a desert. Yeah. Those are the only two things I ever published, but they're still pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
I started after that getting into like doing like scripting and stuff with Lewis scripting with Gary's mod. And so I made a bunch of random stuff. Like one of the ones that's coming to mind is like a rocket launcher that shot watermelons. I would just make inventive things for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess my first proper game would technically be something that I'd made in Scratch, which I also think is still available.
Yeah, it is.
Like, okay, cool.
No, my kids come home and they're like, Mom, we did this thing at school with Scratch. And I'm like, wait, I've heard developers talk about that.
Excellent.
What? So
that's the first step. That's step number one, first game. I was making weird stuff back then too. Like it was a 2-player game where you were in an elevator and the elevator would just keep going down. People would get on, get off at different floors, and you could just get off the elevator anytime, but you also didn't have to. So that was some weird like artsy game I was making.
Did it have like a point, or was it just...
No, you were just on an elevator and you could get off at any point, and there was two of you, so you could...
Did you have elevator music though?
No. This was also in Scratch and I wasn't that good at music at the time.
Very fair, very fair. So how did you go from the Scratch to game?
Yeah, so I always loved programming. So programming was what was the starting thing for me. And so I went on to study at Victoria University of Wellington, did software engineering degree, and every possible chance I had in an assignment to make a game instead of any other piece of software, I would. So like, trying to think of an example. There's a computer graphics paper, and in that I was like, sweet, I'm going to use Unity and make a city generator. And so I did that with some friends, and that was really fun. Did the games paper, obviously, made like a jousting game, but you're in an office. And then did game jams at university as well. I was really bad at them for the first couple of years, but it's a whole skill in itself. But I was really lucky. And when I finished, I remember seeing an ad for a junior programmer at Dinosaur Polo Club. And I applied for that, and I was part of an internship program, and that meant that all of the internship offers come out on the same time and the same day, so everyone has a chance to accept them or decline them, so that if someone else wants the role you declined, they can get it and know within the day also. So I told Dinosaur Polo Club, I have to know by this time, or I have to take like a fintech job or a regular software job, because I'd get locked into the internship. But that time and date was actually in the middle of their hiring round, so they hadn't finished interviews yet.
Yep.
And so what ended up happening is that they decided to offer me an internship in addition to the role that they were already hiring. And that internship turned into nearly 8 years in the industry. And that's how I kind of got into the industry. I got really lucky.
Yeah. So working there, they're quite a small company, aren't they?
When I joined, I was employee number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But by the time I'd left, they were 30. So
yeah. And during your time there, you worked on the mini Metro games?
Yeah, so the first thing I ever worked on was when you pause Mini Metro, it will have a little triangle on the direction that the train is going. That was the first change I ever did in professional games. But then I worked on a bunch of other stuff on Mini Metro, like revamping the tutorial, working on creative mode, stuff like that. And then I worked on Mini Motorways after that.
I always get the names mixed up. And I'm like, I know there's a car one and a train one, but the names, I'm like, they're Mini something.
Yeah. We made the poor decision of having things be MM, so the codes got confusing.
Yeah, they would have. So what was it like working? I guess what was it like going from studying and like almost doing games as a hobby to doing it as a job?
Yeah, I distinctly remember saying in the interview that if I didn't get the games job, my long-term plan was to get like a regular software engineering job and then just make games on the side until it goes well, which I guess is a lot of people's plans. It's an interesting question comparing it to studying, though, because when you're studying, you don't really have that much time to make games. That's what game jams are so great about. It's like, what if you condensed, a couple of months of part-time work into a weekend and just smashed out something? And so that was probably the actual extent of my hobbyist game development during university was game jams and, the assignments I squeezed things into.
Yeah. So did you find that working in games was difficult, or was it like, yes, I love this. This is my jam. I'm so happy.
It was my jam. I think when you're in university doing software engineering, you do a lot of things like algorithms. You learn like how to do a pathfinding algorithm. You learn how to do all sorts of different stuff. When you are in a software engineering job, a lot of what you're doing, at least for me, because I worked at PowerShop and I worked at Google, a lot of what I was doing was web development. And that's cool. Like making a website's pretty cool. And it's a real skill. It wasn't a skill that I wanted to be an expert in. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what you're doing is just creating data from one point to another. And the more useful skills is actually like the ability to learn and the ability to structure code, which is also useful in game dev, obviously. But I really liked algorithms. I love a pathfinding algorithm. And the fact that I got to do like a bunch of those in my first year of game dev felt really special to me. So I was really, really enjoying just being able to do interesting and exciting code as like a junior.
Yeah, that sounds like it lined up so perfectly. I love it when things like you look back and you're like, wow, things really lined up perfectly for me. And like imagining any other alternative is just like, what? So tell me about what other games you were playing growing up. What inspired you to kind of want to really make?
I spent a lot of time playing Source games. So Half-Life 2, Portal, Team Fortress 2, Garry's Mod. Those would probably be the types of games I thought I would have liked to have worked on when I was younger. What else did I play? I played a lot of Flash games. When you're a kid and don't have any money, Flash games are amazing. And I feel like some of the notable ones, I really enjoyed physics games, which makes sense for me making Shape Sender Deluxe.
Yeah.
When I think about inspirations, there's a bunch of really niche ones, actually. There was this like leg game, Flash game, where there was like a trash compacting robot that would just go left to right and you would like make stairs for it with Lego pieces.
Okay.
That is actually, now that I think about it, that probably has influenced my game design sensibilities. The Incredible Machine is like one I played really, really young on school computers. And that's another one that's like physics-based gameplay. Definitely an inspiration for the game.
Mm-hmm.
What else was I playing as a kid? Yeah, I think those kind of Source games, Left 4 Dead 2, those are probably the biggest influence, I would say.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the path to that, to Shape Sender Deluxe. So tell us about Shape Sender Deluxe for those who don't know what the game is.
Yeah.
Give us the pitch.
So Shape Sender Deluxe is a game in which you're bouncing, floating, teleporting, magneting shapes from one point to another. And your new best friend Cindy is there to teach you how to play and banter with you and give you advice, give you hints, and maybe other things that are spoilers if I talk about. So
we love mystery. Yeah. We love a mystery.
There's some stuff going on.
Yeah,
which is worth checking out.
So it does have a story.
Yeah, we tried to. it very much came from this angle of like, we had these cool mechanics that were fun to play with and people liked them. But I went to a talk at GDC a few years ago from a French puzzle designer who made a game Down the Bun Burrows. And what they were talking about is that what puzzle games are hard to sell. This is probably one of my biggest pieces of advice, is really think about if you want to make a puzzle game.
Yep.
But when you have other elements to it, that's the stuff that will really hook people. So in Down the Bun Burrows, each puzzle is quite simple to understand. You're kind of chasing bunnies around and trying to make it exploit as pathfinding so that you can catch it.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you go deeper into the game, you uncover the meta parts of the puzzles and that mystery of breaking between levels and changing the definition of what a level even is.
Mm-hmm.
Makes the game more than what it seems. And so adding a story and narrative that are very intertwined in the gameplay mechanics for Shape Sender Deluxe, I'm hoping will do the same, where players will play it and go, haha, this is cool and neat. And then they'll really play it and they'll go, what's going on?
Yeah.
This is great. And I need to tell people about it.
Yeah. I think I definitely prefer puzzle games that have that story hook. Because otherwise, sometimes it feels like I'm just solving a puzzle. What's the point? Like, I need deeper meaning, so I get that. It definitely makes it feel like, I don't know, it's more like satisfying to solve the puzzle when you know that you're like, it's doing something towards something else.
Yeah, like you kind of want a driving factor that's more than just the satisfaction of solving the puzzle.
Yeah.
Like, sure, like having a Sudoku is there. And, it's cool to solve a Sudoku and go like, yeah, I did it. But what if that Sudoku helped you solve crime?
Yeah.
Suddenly you're a lot more invested in why.
That would be a really cool game.
And you can have that one for free.
Next. So how did you go from Dinosaur Polo Club to Shape Sender Deluxe? Like, what was the, motivation to do something yourself?
Yeah, that's a long story, but it's a good one.
I love long stories.
Dinosaur Polo Club's really cool about people working on other games. And one of the other things they're really cool about is that there's quite a large training budget for upskilling and learning new things. So we had the opportunity to go to GDC in San Francisco a couple of times, which was really awesome, really amazing experience. It's a shame about the state of it right now. But during COVID, it's obviously a lot harder to go overseas and go to conferences when they're all canceled. But we still had this training budget. And so I kind of pitched to them and went, what if I use this training budget to instead work on a game start to finish, just a small one, just to kind of allow myself to upskill on things I don't normally do? Because starting a new project is a whole skill. Finishing a project is a whole skill. Making an options screen is a whole skill. Because what I'd been doing at that point was working on Mini Motorways post-production, and doing post-production is a whole skill. But when that's all you're doing, it can feel like you're kind of stagnating in all of the other stuff that's required to make a game. And so they were like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And so I was working 4 hours a week on the early version of Shape Sender Deluxe, which was just the mechanics, much simpler, much smaller, released it for free on itch. And yeah, that was really cool. I put it out there, put it down, didn't think about it for a while. And then Code NZ started doing funding they opened up their national one, because previously they were just operating in Dunedin. And Code is a body that's like semi-government that offers grants to New Zealand game developers. And I was like, I wonder if I could get one of those grants. And so I remember having this conversation. I was still on holiday actually in Europe at the times, at an ungodly hour, talking to one of the representatives about the feasibility of getting a grant. One of the initial ideas I was going to pitch was like way more artsy, way more feelings and simple mechanics. And they were like, no, not for us. You can make artsy games in your own time, because they want more commercially viable ones. And so I was like, well, what if I made a proper version of this other game they've already made? And they're like, hell yeah, that sounds great. And so that kind of kicked off the application process for that. I applied for the grant, got the grant, and then I was like, oh, people think this is a really good game actually. And so yeah, I just started working away at that in part-time. Dinosaur Polo Club had gone to 4 days a week at this point, so it was a lot more feasible to do side projects. So that was really cool, trucking along on that. And yeah, that kept going until I decided that I wanted to kind of do it full time. I had found a publisher, signed that, and then yeah, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to kind of do this properly now and go full time on it and actually release it. Because going from part time to full time is get so much more done.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine.
yeah, you have better work-life balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really awesome being able to do that. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. Was that terrifying?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Absolutely. Like it was a really tough decision to make because it's like I'm making cool stuff at Dinosaur Polo Club working on the third game, but I also really believe in my own stuff and I'm probably not going to make billions of dollars or anything. But I think I was just kind of ready to start working on my own thing. It felt like the next logical step for my personal growth. And it's definitely hard to make that decision of I have two really good things and I want one of them slightly more, even though it's way more work. It's way harder. I'm going to get paid less, but it is what I want to do. And I've honestly never really been one for money. I've always just been one for the work that I do, the people I do it with. That's always kind of been the most important part.
Yeah, I love that. I'm the same. I'm very much like I do the work because I like doing the work and because the work is important, not because I expect to make $1 million making YouTube videos, because that's just not reality for most people. It'd be nice though.
It'd be nice. It'd be pretty sweet.
So I know you got Code NC funding. Then did you get a second lot of Code NC funding, or was that the same grant?
Yeah, no. So there was a second round.
I was going to say, I'm like, didn't you just get that last year? I'm sure you were full-time before that.
Yeah, so I went full-time, would have been, I had actually done the application, quit Dinosaur Polo Club, or like put in my notice, and I didn't find out that I got the grant until after I had left, which was, not the greatest financial decision making on my part, but there were like other factors because I also was signed up to go to Gamescom, which meant I was in Europe, and I decided to extend that trip to 6 weeks instead of flying, 30 hours for 1 week in Germany.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll just, quit before I do my travel, and then I don't have to do a whole shenanigans with leave and then leave afterwards. So yeah, there was a brief couple of months where I was like, I'm just going to dive into my savings. What's the worst that could happen? And I'm really glad that didn't happen because making games is really expensive.
Yeah. So what is the difference between the two fundings? Was it the same or is it a different program?
So it's the same. There's like two levels of grant. There's like a startup grant and there's a kickstart grant. So the kickstart is just like you have an inkling of an idea that's pretty solid and you think is fun, and you kind of need some money to either spend time making it worthy to seek more funding from like publishers or investors, or you need to pay other people to do the stuff that you don't know how to do, which is great for me personally. Can design a program, but art is not my vision, and audio I can understand but can't do well, and writing I can do, but I want to have someone that's better than me to look over it and edit it and help me along the way. And so that Kickstart grant is what allowed me to, come up with Sendy and have the amazing audio that the game does and have the game look as good as it does, because without the help of my friends and contractors on that, it would look pretty bad and sound okay.
We love that. We love that. So what was the process of applying for funding like? Because I know a lot of people get really intimidated by the whole process.
Yeah, it is intimidating. It's quite a process. And going from hobbyist, I have a cool game idea, to, I actually would like to have some money for this, there's quite a big leap to that. But what's cool about the application process is that it actually is there to set you up well for making a video game, believe it or not, because it forces you to come at the problem making a game, not just with, haha, I'm going to make some cool game with friends. I am creating a solid business case for why this game will succeed and how the steps I will take to get there. And the more solid that the assessors believe that you have your head screwed on straight, the more likely you are to get the grant. And even if you don't, you're like, oh no, I made a production plan and a budget and a marketing plan for nothing. No, you didn't. It just means you have all this amazing stuff now to actually ship a game. So yeah, the application process is tough, but it gives you all the skills and all of the material to actually ship a game regardless of if you get the grant or not. Obviously, the grant is amazing and gives you the money to actually action a lot of the things. But for example, another thing that they talk about is important to have in your application is, if you don't get the grant, what are you going to do? Or if you don't get a publisher, what are you going to do? And having those plans in there forces you to come to terms with the realities of making a game. That is part of the gift, is the application process. And if you get into it and you're like, actually, this is really hard, that's fine. That's a lesson learned as well.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the things that you mentioned there, like your business case and your marketing plan, are the things that people like to pretend don't exist for a while. And then they'll ship a game and they'll be like, why didn't my game work? Or why did this take so much longer than it should have taken? Or XYZ. And it's usually because you didn't do the steps of like actually doing like essentially a business plan for your game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to like understand that, I guess. Like, no, the process is just as valuable in a lot of ways as getting the funding. Do you think that helped when you were approaching publishers as well?
Absolutely. Because part of the other thing that Code does is they run a lot of workshops. And in those workshops, you get to do all sorts of different stuff. So there's a workshop coming up that is about first-time user experience. But one of the amazing workshops is John Cartwright does a pitching workshop. And so you go in there and you learn how to actually pitch your game and what's important to have in a pitch, and what parts of how your business plan that you've hopefully already made by this point feeds into your pitch. And part of the other business plan as well is, who are you going to pitch to and why are you pitching to them, and why them and not other people, and how are you going to do it. And all of that means you have all of the boxes ready to go for, I can pitch to someone. Instead of it being, oh, you should go pitch, it's, oh, follow these exact steps and you will be in front of someone pitching to them.
Yeah. What made you decide to go with the publisher?
So that's a great question, actually.
I know there's a lot of like people who are like, no, I'm never going with the publisher. And there's a lot of people who are very focused on getting a publisher. So what was that? What was that like?
Yeah. Like, I think, the indie dream is always to not have a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Because, then it's fully yours. You can do stuff whenever you want. And that works if you've got a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not everyone is in that position. And there's a lot of stuff in making a game that costs a bunch of money that you can live without, but will limit your market reach. Easiest example is like localization, putting it on different storefronts, porting to different consoles. And what I was looking for in a publisher wasn't necessarily funding. That was kind of a nice bonus, but it was more all of those services. And the approach I had with regards to like rev shares and things like that was, this is just the first game. And this is advice I got from a friend actually, is that like I should remove as many barriers as possible to shipping just the first game, just to kind of get the studio started. And a bunch of those barriers publishers handle really well, like having marketing connections and having press connections and knowing who to contact for localization. And yeah, and it is scary and it does cost money because you have to have a lawyer to, sort out contracts and stuff. But the way I'm approaching it this is just the first game, maybe this will do well enough that I don't need a publisher for the second one. But if I really like working with them, which I do so far, then like, maybe I'll just do it again. If I am paying this much money to just not worry about a bunch of things, that sounds amazing.
It's kind of money well spent, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully.
Yeah, hypothetically. I always say, like, I know my sister's real, like, stingy with, like the electricity bill or, like, the heating bill. And she'll like, no, we're not putting a heater on, or, like, we're not putting the aircon on. And I'm like, but don't you think it's, like, worth, like, being comfortable to pay? Like, that's what you're paying the money for. Like, you're paying it so you can be warm. Is that not worth money?
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you like, you put it in that perspective and you're like, oh, hold on, no, actually, this is actually really worth it.
Yeah. It's like we have enough to worry about, and like maybe I will be less worried about things on my second time round.
Yep.
But right now, there's a lot to worry about.
So is the goal, like you obviously mentioned, this is the first game, it's the studio. So what is the vision? Yeah,
the studio vision for Dead Teapot. It's a good question. So Shapes Sender Deluxe is, it's our first game. It's puzzly, it's weird, it's subversive, and it's systems based. It's not so much a puzzle game where there's one set solution to everything. You can solve things however you want. And also, like, the music is really important. It's very highly integrated into the gameplay. In fact, like the physics system is stepped by the music system. Like, that's how tightly the gameplay is integrated to the music. And I think it's making me think about what are the defining characteristics of the studio. And I think how I want the studio to be is making games that are very systems heavy, very creative, and very music and audio driven. Like, I think about other studios that might be more, here's our art style for the types of games we make, or here's the types of stories we tell. And I think Dead Teapot is going to be a studio of, here's the type of gameplay we want to evoke in our players. And it doesn't mean we're going to make puzzle games. It doesn't mean we're going to make music games, but you should be able to be creative in the types of games that we make.
I love that. That's so good. I think it's so important to have that as well. Like, if you don't have a vision for where you're going, sometimes that can make like decision making really difficult in the now. So having like that guiding kind of principle can be so useful, even just in like what the vision for your game is as well, like on a, lesser scale. It's a lot easier when you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, the pillars of Shape Sender Deluxe are almost identical to what they were at the start. Very much, I think, from memory, it's like Whistle Factor, which is the satisfaction of watching a bustling system. So like just watching all the shapes run around.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity was one of the pillars. There's one more that I don't remember now, but I've talked about it in talks and stuff before. But we're kind of at the tail end of the design anyway, so I don't really have to think about them as much.
Yeah. Do you think that having those defined so early in the process made it easier to make the game?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. You should have them defined early on, because I can think of a bunch of decisions which came down to, it doesn't meet this pillar. Like, an example of an early one is that one of the ideas for how to make the puzzles replayable was to make it so that you had a budget. So if you think of something like Polybridge. In Polybridge, you're building bridges, and all of the resources you use cost money, and you want to use as few resources as possible, and that encourages creativity through optimization, because you want to find creative solutions to this particular constraint that you have. And I put that in Shape, and what I found is that it actually did the opposite for this particular game, because what would happen is you would just kind of play it and you go, oh, I feel bad for doing something stupid, like solving the level with 15 magnets. And that's not the type of creativity I wanted to encourage for the primary playthrough. If players want to do that, I'm happy for them to solve it with like a single tool. And that's pretty cool. But what I really wanted players to do is to just come up with stupid stuff. I want them to make stupid, weird little contraptions and feel creativity in pushing the bounds of what they can make. And that came back to the pillar. Like, even though the optimization mechanic was cool for one specific thing, it didn't fit the pillar.
Yeah, cool. That's so interesting to see it like in practice as well, not just like talking about it hypothetically. So you're full-time now. Do you have a team, or is it mostly just contracting?
Yeah, I mean, they are the team. Like, they're our contractors because we only have so much money to throw around, but they are the team as well. Yeah. So there's me, there's Finn Michelanian, who is the audio engineer and designer. He does so much magic. We actually went to the same high school, but he released this program called Droplets, which is a physics-based music synthesizer sequencer thing. I don't know, it's music terms. But I saw that and immediately was like, oh no, he's the guy. He's the guy. Because it was basically Shape, but as a music sequencer tool, and just the tool. And I was like, wow, this is it. Bring that in. So that was awesome. And then Poppy Durad, they are the art director. So we worked together on Mini Motorways. We did a lot of stuff together on that. They were did some of the very first concept art for the game. And they also helped with the very first prototype. So we were working together during my time at Dinosaur Polo Club on the original prototype of Shape Sender Deluxe, and they created awesome minimalist art. They designed Sandy, so the square we know and love, that came from their brain, which was super cool. Yeah, all the color palettes and stuff, you can see the experience and the lineage come back to early Mini Motorways of that bright minimalist colorfulness coming into this as well. And then Saf Davidson's a narrative designer. She's awesome. She's worked on Necrobarista and a bunch of other things before we leave, other games that are not coming to my brain right now. But we'd worked together doing some voiceovers for some prototype ages ago. And I've read one of her early books that it was ages ago. It really hooked me. It was sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
But when I was hey, I've got a subversive character that kind of hates the player. Do you want to help me write it? She was really on board.
Yep.
So that was really fun. And so, it's kind of a ragtag team, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a good team.
Yep. Cool. And so, working full time on the game, what does a day in your life look like?
I recently did a talk at the local game developers of Wellington meetup called Tana is, in brackets, learning to be a studio director. And it was basically just each slide was something different that I've done since the start of the year. And you'll hear this all the time, that studio direction and business stuff is just such a random grab bag of things that you have to do all the time. So, for example, it's like, paying invoices, doing what I was doing today was paying invoices and GST returns.
Mm-hmm.
And then, last month I was getting playtesting done from a company, Playful. What else was I doing? Learning about tax, talking to friends about getting some contracting done for like server backend stuff for level creators.
Mm-hmm.
Sign a lease on like an office space. Like, it's just such a random collection of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not even like working on the game. This is just this is just the biz dev
the
stuff.
Extra stuff.
Oh yeah, like did like a localization kit export from the game, and then I had to write a tool to change some stuff from feedback from the publisher, and then it's just so much random stuff. So the way I try to structure my days is that I never let business stuff go past 12 o'clock. So as soon as it hits lunchtime, I don't do any more business stuff until the next day, unless it's like incredibly urgent. But I typically won't even check my email, so I won't know if it's urgent until the next morning. And that I find is a really nice balance, because it dedicates the entire afternoon and evening, if I get that stuck in, to just like making the game and doing game design, doing programming and implementing things. And then I wake up, get the business out of the way, just do that for the rest of the day. And that's kind of my hot tip, is to time box your business stuff or you will go insane.
Yeah. I think like there's all over the internet with anything creative, there's always that conversation of, how do you avoid burnout? How do you find balance? How do you, do all of those things? So have you struggled with setting those boundaries for yourself?
No, I'm kind of the opposite. If it's a really nice day, I just go to the beach and I'll come back and I'll work in the evening instead. That's one of the things I've really been enjoying about full-time on my own thing, is that instead of my life revolving around work revolves around my life and kind of fills in the gaps where I'm not doing anything else. So if I decide I just want to go to the beach, I just kind of do that. Which is really problematic during the summer, because I don't get as much work done as I'd like to do. But on a day like
you
today,
get double it done in the winter.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Get so much work done in the winter. But yeah, I do quite enjoy that cadence, because it means I can kind of live my life how I want to. I can, take a week off and then work weekends the next couple of weeks, and that's fine. It's stressful and there's a lot to think about all the time, but I don't know, I think I do prefer this. Like, I've been doing some contracting this week for a separate company, which means I'm back to doing a 9 to 5 just for this week. And it's actually been like really exhausting going back to doing that. Where previously I'll have a nap at 3 o'clock and then work till 6. And I remember having this conversation with a friend who's not in games, and he was telling me about how once you kind of go onto your own schedule, it's really hard to go back. Even though it's so much more work, it's so many more things to worry about. Having that flexibility is really amazing.
Yeah, that does sound like the perfect kind of lifestyle, doesn't it?
I don't think it's for everyone. Like, it is, you have to have a lot in your brain all the time. And one of the other hot tips from Tana is you just have to accept that things won't get done to the quality level you want, because you just don't have the time to do that. That's something I've definitely come to terms with. I used to be like not a perfectionist, but I like to do things to the degree of quality I'd like. But, you just don't have time. It just has to get done. And done is sometimes good enough.
Yeah. Yes. And it can be so like relieving, I guess, when you let go of something and you're like, no, it's okay. This is okay. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be, so nice. So has there been anything that's really surprised you about game development or studio directing, I suppose?
I was definitely surprised about studio directing and just how much you have to learn constantly. Like, I don't know how anyone runs a business, honestly. Like, I guess if you went to business school and learned business, you could run a business. But I don't know how anyone's meant to do it when they already went to school for something else and also need to do the something else while also trying to, like remember how to file a tax return and like get tax forms from your contractors who are not technically your employees and learn how to pay yourself and how that's separate. And I don't know, man. I don't know how anyone does it. I'm fighting for my life out here, but it stops at 12 o'clock. And then I just go back to doing the fun part.
You're just fighting for your life for like 3 hours and then you're good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's chill.
So, what have been some of the biggest highlights, do you reckon?
It's been 2025 was really awesome.
Yeah.
There was a lot of cool stuff because I met the publisher in March of 2025. And then that was signed in, I want to say, September, October. So it was like a lot of business stuff, but then that finally got resolved then. And it was a bit earlier. Got the code grant, obviously, and found out in September. Went to Gamescom with the game. That was really fun. And one of the big highlights was I got asked to speak at Parallels, which is like one of the really cool free play events during Melbourne International Games Week.
Yep.
And it was really, really fun. I had only been to one Parallels before that, and I loved it so much. And I was like, oh, I have to speak at this whenever I can. And so when Mads reached out, I was like, hell yeah, let's go. But I was actually really nervous about it. Like, I've done a lot of talks. I've talked about all sorts of different stuff. But this is the first time what I decided to do for it, and you can watch the replay of it. What I decided to do was, instead of having slides, I played the game and each level was a slide. So I made custom levels for it and wrote custom dialogue where Cindy would like talk to the audience or talk to me. And it was really fun. It was basically about creativity and how to evoke creativity in players in your games. And I think it was really funny playing the game live on stage because, I have rough ideas of how I'm solving each thing, but I'm kind of making it up on the fly a little bit. And if things, if I misclick or put something somewhere, that eats into my time. But it was just one of the really amazing things was while I was solving the puzzle, the crowd started cheering as it nearly got solved. And once it got solved, they all clapped. And I was like, oh, I didn't account for this. That wasn't in the script.
Yeah.
But just having a whole room of hundreds of people clapping because you solved a puzzle on stage was really funny.
I don't know that there is anywhere else that you could kind of get away with that as well. Like, Parallels is the perfect place for that type of a talk.
Yeah. And that's what makes me so happy is how well it was received, because I always kind of had this thing in my mind. I was like, I only get to speak at Parallels like once, and this is how I'm doing it. What if I've like wasted my chance? And then it turned out like amazing and everyone loved it. So I was really, really happy with how that went.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think hopefully Parallels will continue. I know that's up in the air at the moment, but such a valuable event, I think.
Free Play does a lot of amazing work. In fact, actually, while we're here, Free Play Awards, they had like an Over the Ditch award for New Zealand games.
Mm-hmm.
And the early prototype of Shape Sender Deluxe was nominated in that category. And it was like the first time that would be the first time the game was ever nominated for anything, which is pretty cool.
It's all looping back around to each other, isn't it? Yeah, the whole story. It's so cool. It's so cool. So I guess, what about the challenges? Has there been any like real hard slogs?
Yeah, I mean,
obviously, I feel like there always is, but
yeah, I think hard slogs. It's never like easy. And like doing, like I've said before, all of the studio director stuff constantly feels like an insurmountable pile of random shit you have to learn and then do and not make any mistakes or you'll get audited. But, we work it out. I think in my brain, when I have to do something, I just kind of put up with it and get it done. When I don't have to do something, there's a good chance it doesn't get done. And yeah, so I think a lot of it is just perseverance. You just kind of work through it. I'm trying to think of an exact tangible slog.
It's a good thing if there isn't any, to be honest.
I think there's a lot of things I could have done better. Like I just kind of shadow announced the game. I think the ANZ Indie Showcase was when it was technically in its first showcase as an announcement.
But it did kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I think I did that because we were going to be at PAX. And I was like, oh, the game has to be announced before we go to PAX. And in reality, I don't think that's true. I think I could have just shown it at PAX as like, ooh, we're going to announce soon. And then had the announcement as part of a showcase instead of just out of nowhere. So that's something I would have done better. And there's so many things I've learned in this time. What else? There's just a lot of things I would have done better.
I think that is the story of life, though, isn't
it?
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Could have done that better. Next time we'll do this better. I know you mentioned you are heading into the alpha stage, or you've hit alpha stage.
Yeah.
What is that like? That's a pretty big milestone, right?
It's pretty exciting, honestly. Yeah. Alpha for us means that most of the game is in, not the accessory features, but you can play the game start to finish and have a good time. And sure, it's not going to be like 100% polished, but it was really awesome hitting alpha because that means we could give it to people and they could play the entire thing, and we could have a good idea of how long it takes to play it and what are the main pain points to kind of get from the start to the finish. And yeah, that was really awesome. I think we're also on track to be hitting like feature complete, which is that every feature of the game is done and implemented. Again, might not be like 100% polished, but you can use and interact with the entire game, which is also really, really cool.
Yeah, that is a huge milestone.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to give it to people and they can play it. I think before that, you're kind of like, oh, don't play it yet. But, you should, because playtests are really important.
Yep.
But I'm definitely at the point where, like, my friends that I want to impress are asking for keys. And I'm like, yeah, you can have one. You can play it now that it looks really good. Because for a long time, it was kind of like, I'm much more of like a systems designer than a content designer. And so I had, a great time setting up like magnets and fans and like having them do this and interacting with that. And then I was like, oh, I just have to make like 70 levels now. And so hitting that point was a little bit of a slog. I still enjoyed it, but it was still just like, it's a lot of levels to make all at once. And I think I'm much better doing that in short bursts. And then also doing all of the writing for all 70 levels, or all 100 levels. That was like a whole nother thing of like, I have to just write content. And again, I'm like by degree a software engineer.
Yeah.
And my experience is mostly in system design. So like, Mini Motorways, Mini Metro didn't have a lot of narrative to speak of. It's kind of very subtle narrative, but it's not like there's writing there. And if there was writing, I didn't do it because you're on a team of 30 people who are all amazing. And so, yeah, doing a little bit of everything and having to make content was one of the new surprises for me for Alpha. But it was good. It was nice to kind of get to the other side of that and go, that's the first draft. It's like playable start to finish. And this comes back to what I was saying before of just getting it. Once you accept that it doesn't have to be perfect, finished, finalized quality, it means it allows you to get through that content creation slog part of the journey much faster because you can go, once it's done, you can iterate on it, but you can't iterate on what isn't there yet.
Yeah, so true. So true. Sometimes it's just for me, it's like getting like something written down, like getting like, even a dot pointed script down, and then you can go back and you can flesh it out and it's fine. And it's like, once you've got that, you're fine. But the getting there, it's like, really, I have to do this? What? Again? By choice? What?
Yeah. It just seems insurmountable thinking about having to do 70 of anything.
Has there been any big learning moments or times you've changed things when developing the game?
Ooh, changed things. I can think of a lot of earlier ones. For example, way earlier, super, super early in its development, I had some people play test it. And one of the first tools you had access to, in fact, the first tool you had access to was a portal, so you could just teleport things around. Because one of the big inspirations for the game was Portal. And in fact, the very, very, very first thing I ever implemented in the game was a portal. And that's just because I wanted to play with a fun little, I wonder if I could like teleport things through a thing and have it be seamless. And it was just a tech demo.
Yeah.
And so once they'd played it and they were like, having the portal first was a bit confusing because it's, you have to have two of them and they have to match up. And I was like, but that's what the whole game's about. And once I'd let go of that, they ended up getting nerfed and put right at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And the game was so much better for it. And that was definitely like I was inexperienced because this literally would have been probably over 5 years ago, 4 years ago at least. I was definitely a much more junior designer back then.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be really hard. I can't even, my brain is like, how do you even work out what to put in what order, no, that is, I could do business stuff all day. I can do emails, I can do tax, I can do that all day. No, not level design. That's not my thing.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yep.
It's fun though.
Yeah, business thing's fun. I'm weird in that way, but it's fun. All right. Do you have any advice for people trying to get into game development or who are earlier in their game dev journeys?
I've got some random piece of advice. I'll just list them off. Making a puzzle game is really hard. And I maybe said this. Basically, yeah, like I think the advice I was giving people was don't make a puzzle game, make a game with puzzles. Because I think there's this category of self-proclaimed like puzzle freaks, and they will play like any puzzle game. They don't care if there's a story, but they just love to solve things. And that niche is quite small for, if you're trying to make a commercially successful game. That means, your market reach is only going to get so far. But if you make something that has an interesting story and has puzzles in it, I guess what I mean by that is that they're buying in for the experience and the gameplay is the puzzles. And that's kind of what I've been trying to pivot. There's only so much you can pivot a minimalist physics puzzle game into not being a puzzle game. So the way I kind of went for that is have Sandy be the, haha, look at this funny guy who's a bit weird. And then you get in there and you're like, oh, it's a cool puzzle game. I'm sure there's a marketing person who has better terms for this. I remember hearing it the other day that was like something about hooks.
I was going to say a hook.
Yeah, but it was something like there's like two kinds of hooks or something. The one that you see when you want to buy it, the one that keeps you playing, something like that. And so that's piece of advice number one. Piece of advice number two is just make games, I guess. Just make them and finish them. Finish the game. Just put it out there. Make it small. Scope tiny. Don't make an RPG as your first game. Just make something real small and put it out there. And that shows that you can make a game. And it looks good on your CV. Third random piece of advice. What have I got? Talks are a great way to get your face in front of a bunch of game developers who may or may not be hiring. And when you do a talk, it can be about anything you want or are interested in, but make sure you've done research so it doesn't come across as like, look, I've discovered this cool new technique. And then everyone in the room is like, yeah, we've been doing that for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's just the kind of advice I gave to someone else recently.
Yeah. Is that from experience? Is there a story there?
That's more from like, I've just seen a lot of people give talks where their big revelation is something a lot of people are already aware of. And I think you can still talk about that revelation if you talk about other people's research into it. Like my first talk ever at a conference was about demos. And this was before NextFest was a thing. So it would have been like 2019. And I didn't claim to be an expert on demos, but I did have research. And I was like, here's someone smarter than me talking about it, and here's a bunch of examples of cool demos that you can do. Yeah. And while we're talking about talks, at the end of your talk, say thank you and let them applaud and then ask for questions. That's just one of my pet peeves when people are like, thanks, any questions? And then the audience is sitting there like, do we clap or do we answer a question? Don't give your audience, design your talk as a designer, design the experience. All right, I'm done.
That was really good advice. Cool. Is there anything else, any other tidbits or lore drops or anything that you want to add?
I mean, I can talk about lots of different things with prompts. Wishlist Shape Sender Deluxe on Steam.
Yes, very important, very important.
Yeah, so we're looking to release it this year, so stay tuned. It's going to be a big year for Shape Sender Deluxe. We'll be at the Alt Games Showcase in Sydney in April, and we'll be in other things in the coming months, which we will announce at some point. Vague enough for you?
Yeah. It's always a contentious question, and I always feel bad for asking, like, how's your game going? When's it coming out? Because that's what everyone always asks, and it's like, I know. I've talked to enough developers that I know it's a slug, but that's exciting. 6. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
This is the year.
Fingers crossed. Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We will leave the link in the description or the show notes so you can wishlist Shape Sender Deluxe. It is looking great. Do you have a demo out at the moment, or is it?
Yeah, so we've got a demo up on Steam at the moment. You can check it out. It's a little dated, I'll admit, but it's still pretty cool.
If you want to check it out and see what we mean by physics-based music-ish puzzle game description, you can check out the demo. But otherwise, we will wrap it up there. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, and until next time, stay caffeinated.